Offering everybody, if you believe the clarity is yours. Yeah, God will get the glory out of this. That's powerful. That's absolutely powerful. And I want you to see yourselves as deities or divinities, that you will get clarity. Perception is the ultimate reality, but not necessarily the ultimate truth. The theme of this month at All Souls is vision, perception, how you see things. Wayne Dyer says when you change the way you look at things, the things you look at change. You have to decide what perception of your particular situation you choose to believe or to accept. Where do we go from here? What does all of this mean? You decide what it means. Hayward, it's good to see you today. You decide what it means. You're a cool head. Dad Lloyd over there, Tillman Lloyd, that's Todd's dad. And I love you, sir. Great man, great spirit, great man of God and faith, and he just keeps on going. He's had some physical challenges, but the old boy just keeps on going. Proud of you, sir. God bless you. This has indeed been a traumatic week, not only for Tulsans, but for Americans, because we're rehearsing or repeating emotions that we have felt before. In 1921, when the riot took place in the Greenwood area of Tulsa, I don't think anybody believed that these many years hence we'd still be having similar incursions, but neither did they at that time believe there'd be a black president or a black attorney general. I don't think that there'd be this many African Americans in the South Tulsa church. You have to try to see the good and the bad in all of this. There is a aspect to life that can sustain you, and that is you have to decide how you want to look at things. You can be reactionary or you can be responsive. I titled this "What You See is What You Get." I've shifted the theme and I'll deal with that just a few more seconds into the talk today. But vision is the ability to think about or plan the future with imagination and creative wisdom. Dr. King had that vision. He had a dream that America would be better than it was when he started, and it is. However, as long as there are races, there's going to be racism, however subtle or subliminal it is. Every one of us in here has aspects of racism in us, and cultural isms in us, and recognition of income or where you live, what part of the town, what kind of house, what kind of car you drive, what kind of clothes you wear, where you shop, whether it's Walmart or Reese's, Burlington Coat Factory or Saks Fifth Avenue. I've shopped at all of them, and I realize when I go to Burlington, some of the same things that Saks is at Burlington. That was a secret I learned when I lost a lot of stuff. So it has to do a lot with perspective. Images or visions, or images or visions are like magnets. They literally draw you to them. Whatever image or imagination you have becomes your reality. I have a dream is working in so many ways, but so does a good healthy meal or a hearty shower. However, we eat and shower daily. It's a maintenance deal. Maintenance is the key, both necessary and mandatory to eat and to shower. We have dreams. The first thing to get your dream fulfilled is to wake up.
That's right.
And then the second step is to get up from the dream. And sometimes the dream is a nightmare. We've been there. We've all experienced that. There's a metaphysical aspect to vision that suggests that imagination precedes action. What do you imagine our Tulsa to be or our world to be? There's a lot of grief throughout the country. Channel 6 was here in the last service, and they heard me reference in the prayer that we're praying for the police officer who shot Terrence Crutcher. She's somebody's daughter, somebody's sister. She may be somebody's mother. She's got to be horrified. Her picture has been splattered across the country. There's a lot of hatred for her, bitterness and anger. Her family must be traumatized. We need systemic change in our police department. They say she's only been on the force 5 years. Obviously, she panicked. We don't know that she was a racist. Neither the black cop who killed Keith in Charlotte, shot him dead, with his wife saying, please don't shoot him. An African-American police officer shot him dead. He went to Liberty University. Jerry Falwell founded the school. Who knows how he was? It's easy for me to assume that he was racist or that he was careless about his feelings toward his own people. I don't know. That's a prejudgment, which means prejudice. Bullets don't see color. Neither do guns. And sometimes when you're in a blind rage and you're panicked, you don't see anything but protecting yourself, and you do stupid things. I have a nephew that has 17 stitches from being attacked by a police dog in Mississippi last night, and because he resisted arrest, and his mother hasn't been able to even see him, my sister. The family's traumatized by that. He wasn't born in Mississippi, but he drives a truck, and he was driving through there, and he actually resisted arrest, which he should not have done. Marlon was making an example of an African-American lady who said to him, a granddaughter of one of the survivors, one of the last survivors of the race riot, that the father was telling his son, when you get pulled over by a police officer, black or white, but particularly non-black, don't just raise your hand, lay down on the floor, stretch your hands out, and protect yourself from being considered a threat to that police officer. That shouldn't be, but that's the case that it is today. We're traumatized by a system that is threatening to a lot of people. Actually, Oklahoma is known for killing more. This state, this is really stunning, and I'm going to read it, a statistic that I read just the other day that is very, very frightening, but it's also very true, and there's some other aspects. While cops killing African Americans has become an all too common narrative, according to data from the Police Violence Advocacy Group, Oklahoma cops kill black people at a higher rate than any state in the country. I didn't know that. Of the 30 black people killed by police in Oklahoma, 7 were unarmed. Charges were only filed against the officers or officer in 2 of those cases. By comparison, charges also were filed against officers who killed Caucasians on 2 occasions. But there were 18 more white people killed in this state by police officers than blacks. Isn't that interesting? Cops don't just kill people of color. When a cop is threatened or frightened, there's no telling what he'll do. That's why we have to do some systemic change. In one of the cases, the suspect who was killed was armed, with the white cop killing a white person. The other was unarmed, an unarmed woman whose vehicle was struck by a police cruiser. Only a tiny fraction of Oklahoma's police involved shootings results. Only a tiny fraction of Oklahoma's police involved shootings results in charges. The police are rarely charged. For some reason, they are licensed killers, unless they are trained institutionally, culturally, psychologically of what is in their hands. If you don't know that that man is angry or that woman is angry or frightened or intimidated or threatened, if they have situations at home, if they're closet alcoholics or drug addicts, if they're testosterone and ego-driven maniacs, and we put a gun in their hand and a badge on them, they can do anything. Same with soldiers who come back from battle, who are trained to kill, trained to go after the enemy, psychologically deadened in the training. It's not hard for them to pull that gun out, trigger hyper or trigger happy police officers, or great danger to the culture. Systemically, institutional racism will always exist until it is addressed from its roots, not something on the top. So we're wrestling now to find a place and space for all of this to happen with a different kind of clarity. Dr. King, in a 60 Minutes interview, made this comment: I contend that the cry of black power is at the bottom a reaction to the reluctance of white power to make the kind of changes necessary to make justice a reality for the Negro. I think that we've got to see that a riot is the language of the unheard. That's right. That's right. And what is that in America? What is it that America has failed to hear? This was way back in 1966. It has failed to hear that the economic plight of the Negro poor has worsened over the last few years. It has failed to hear that the promises of freedom and justice have not been met. And it has failed to hear that large segments of white society are more concerned about tranquility and the status quo than about justice and humanity. Great point Dr. King makes. Reverend Ike says it's not the love of money that's the root of all evil. Sometimes it's the lack. Which he did not have a lack of. Now, I didn't want to watch the video of Terrence Crutcher. I wasn't in town. I was at the bedside of somebody else. I didn't want to watch the video of him being shot by police, even though it happened right here in a city I've lived in for 45 years. Not to mention, I actually knew Terrence and his family. It is no small thing to witness the end of a human life. Just 2 days ago, I was in the IC room of a dear friend, an 84-year-old lady in Los Angeles, and I encouraged the family to take the life support system off of her, which she'd been literally strangled by all kinds of stuff, keeping her alive, and she slipped away in less than 5 minutes after I had all that stuff taken off. I loved her dearly, went there to kiss her and say goodbye, and her sons were struggling with it, and I was helping them deal with the fact that their mother had coded the Saturday before, and they were keeping her alive. She was miserable. I kept saying, put some cream on her lips, put a little ice in her mouth. Let's take the restraints off of her. Would you allow somebody to jump on your mother in an alley and choke her to death? That's what's happening. She's in horror. Her blood pressure kept going down. It would go up to about 62 when I was singing to her. But I said, nobody wants to go out that way. If she goes out, let her at least go out free. Yes. Death itself is not bad. Dying as well as living can be traumatic. Talk to me, somebody. It was painful to see that happen, but for somebody's life to be taken away from them the way Terrence was is traumatic to a whole system. And to people who are out of control, what do? Riots. What are riots, and how do we allow them to have such an impact on our mind? If we really if you look up the word riot, and I will show you a dictionary definition of it in a little bit. It has to do with a crowd of people upset about something. But it's not just a crowd of people, it's a crowd of thoughts. Right. Our minds are crowded with thoughts right now about what do we do? How can we stop this? What's next? Tulsa has been very responsible, very dignified, if you will, a classy city in its response. From our legal officials, the mayor was at the funeral last night, and the district attorney made a wise decision to have her quickly arrested. We don't know what the outturn of the sentence will ultimately be. There may be some reactions to that either way. She could get as much as 4 years. They say that seems like a small amount for somebody to kill somebody in cold blood. Again, you weigh that with the situation in Charlotte and the police officer with the wife saying, please don't shoot him. He doesn't have a gun. And thank God that we have these cameras that we can see what's going on anymore, because the police officers have a tendency to lie, regardless of their race. I have several friends who are police officers and the blue line they won't cross. There's some kind of fraternal order, some kind of commitment they have to their justice or their clan or their clique or their club, like officers do and preachers do and races do and cultures do. We all have cliques and clans and clubs and little groups that we hold our secrets in. Many of you have a cluster of ideas and thoughts in your mind that are a club you're associated with. Got a whole bunch of voices. You've heard me say we all travel along, but none of us travels alone. We all pick up passengers along the way. Hitchhikers, nameless, faceless, and they all have an opinion. And they all carry on conversations with you, and they are, even now as I'm speaking, you are listening part to me and part to them. You might even be listening mostly to them. Constant conversations and opinions, ophthalmos, ops, views, perceptions, visions. Some of them are dead. You hear the voice of a grandmother, a great-grandparent, somebody in the past, a school teacher, somebody you hung out with as a child. You're hearing voices now, and you don't even know how to shut them down or off. You can have a decent conversation with your family, your child, your spouse, your partner, business associates without those conversations going on. That's when you tell them, shut the front door. Shut them down and shut them off. I have to shut out a lot of clatter and a lot of clutter and a lot of opinions and come to the resolution, both if I was Terrence Crutcher or his parents or his twin, or if I was a police officer, black or white, or Hispanic, or Native American. If I'd only been on the force 5 years and they hadn't properly trained me to deal with crisis, if I've never shot the gun outside of training, if I've never used the gun outside of training, female trying to assert herself, trying to be somebody, trying to show the rest of the guys she's as strong as they are. She shoots somebody, had no idea she would kill him, or maybe she did. We don't know, but I bet she regrets it. For the rest of her life, she'll regret it. And we're going to celebrate Terrence and his family, and we did that last night, and we'll continue to do that and put our arms around him and love him, but very few people are going to love her. So what does the system do with that kind of case? They stop, they reinvestigate their entire operative mode. What the model they've been using has not been working as effectively. How, with all this trauma around police officers killing people, black or white, why don't they stop shooting to kill? Why don't they use tasers more or shoot in the arm or the leg or the foot? Every child that has been born in this country for the last 8 years that are cognizant of what's happening will only know of a black president. And in the next 8 years, very possibly a female president. If something else happened. Anyway, those young people, black or white, have never known a white president or white first family in a White House. All they'll know is same-sex marriages on television and integrated marriages on television. All they'll know are couples with 3 and 4 kids talking about at some point we might get married on television. Their whole worldview is different than this generation. This is not the America we were born in. Everything has changed. We've got to find out where we are. We're still trying to figure out. There's a scripture, and if I can go Unicostal on you, when the day of Pentecost was fully come, they were all in one place on one accord, accordion or cardia, heart. They were all of one heart. And they heard the sound of a rushing mighty wind, breath, spirit, pneuma, wind, a shifting in winds. And then people started speaking in tongues. It wasn't that they were speaking in tongues that was so amazing. The Bible says they were amazed because they understood the tongue. It's not the tongue, it's the understanding we're dealing with right now. And they said, "What meaneth this?" The Greek word there, what do you mean this to mean? What do you intend this to? Why am I understanding? I'm not used to understanding. I'm just used to going through the motions. I didn't think I was supposed to understand what's happening in Jerusalem on Pentecost. I was just going ritualistically. But I'm getting a click that maybe something is happening that I didn't notice before. What do you mean this to mean? What language are we speaking? What language are we hearing? What language are we understanding? To listen means to list, from its Latin derivative, to make list of. Ignorance is not just not knowing, it's not noticing and not making notation of. We're not dealing with ignorance, we are dealing with ignorance. We must not ignore what's happening right now and what is being spoken out culturally. As much as I want to deaden my senses because of the pain, I'm refusing to do that. I want to feel it this time. Yes. I want to actually experience this time. And I've never thought of it so profoundly as I did this time, that I'm trying to feel both sides of the police officer as well as the Crutcher family. Most of them and most of us believe that Terrence is in heaven. The police officer is in hell. And she's barely seen what's going to happen to her. Whether they sentence her or not, she's going to live in hell. She's going to be incarcerated for a long, long time. The black officer in North Carolina is also going to go through some hell. It would be hard for me to believe that he actually intended to kill the man. We don't know his story. But that wasn't racism. Sometimes it's a deadening of a moral conscience. You don't recognize that's a human being standing in front of you. Black lives matter, all lives matter, surely, but there's a human being that's somebody's son or daughter or husband or wife or parent. We've got to look at each other. Paul said, I know no man after the flesh, but after the Spirit, though I once knew Christ that way. When do we get to the place where we see them as a living, important, impacting entity, regardless of their gender or their color or where they live in town? I know what it is to be afraid of any police officer. Most folk don't like them flashing lights. Even police officers don't like them when they own them. But when you're black or of color, you got to remember that the way our armed forces are trained, they're trained to go into foreign lands and shoot if necessary or kill, regardless of collateral damage, people of another culture or race or nationality or ethnicity. They're trained. I've talked to several soldiers who have been in the army and been to the boot camps. They're trained to deaden their senses to that's a human being and just to kill them. If you come back from Afghanistan or Iran or Iraq and you become a police officer, you still have that subliminal thing in your mind. People don't matter. And that's what we've got to change. Talk to me, somebody. The whole military system. Turn to the person next to you and say, I count. I count. And so do you. So do you. And so does your money, so count me out a little bit before I... We've got to take matters into our own hands, our own hearts, our own heads, and decide what we're going to do about this situation. I am proud of the Crutcher family. They've been dignified and elegant and eloquent and peace-loving.
Let's all stand together. You're my brother, you're my sister, so take me by the hand. Together we will work till we're done. There's no foe that can defeat us when we're walking side by side. As long as there is love, we will.
We are your church, and we are proud to be your church, or at least a church that's having a positive impact on your life. I am personally blessed to be your minister, or at least a minister who you're allowing to speak into your life. I hope you'll support our ministry and share your love beyond belief by texting LOVEBB to 41444 or go to our website. But you can just text LOVEBB to 41444 and make your gift. It's wonderful. Thank you. Be blessed and be a blessing.